Hello and welcome to News Now. I'm your host, Taylor Inman. We're going over the week's biggest headlines for Northwest Montana. A jury on Monday acquitted Derek James Jackson of the October 2022 murder of his mother, but found him guilty of killing her boyfriend and unsuccessfully discarding the gun used in the Bigfork slayings. The jury returned with a verdict at about 4 p.m. after roughly 4 hours of deliberation. Flathead County District Judge Amy Eddy, who presided over the week-long trial, set sentencing for April 29th. Deliberate homicide is punishable by between 10 and 100 years in the Montana State Prison. Owing to the use of a gun in the crime, Jackson could face an additional 2 to 10 years behind bars. Tampering with evidence carries a maximum penalty of 10 years and a $50,000 fine. Jackson, wearing a gray suit and dark tie, briefly waved to his father before meeting with Flathead County Detention Center personnel. Detectives investigating the deaths began focusing on 39-year-old Jackson shortly after discovering the bodies of 62-year-old Tricia DeMotts and 65-year-old Stanley Grotberg during an October 28, 2022 welfare check at their Esteban Lane home in Bigfork. Deputies had arrested Jackson earlier that day for allegedly trespassing on a neighbor's property. He was found wearing Grotberg's hat and jacket and in possession of the older man's prescription medication, as well as a magazine for a firearm. The fully loaded .40 caliber Smith & Wesson used in the shooting was left discarded in nearby tall grass. Deputies performed the welfare check hours after unsuccessfully trying to return Grotberg's prescription medication. They spotted blood through the window of the family's Esteban Lane home, according to court documents and witness testimony. In their closing arguments, Deputy County Attorneys Amy Kinnison and Katie Hanley said that all of the available evidence pointed to Jackson as the couple's killer. Jackson's clothing tested positive for gunshot residue, and blood found on his jeans and sweatshirt matched Grotberg's DNA. The only fingerprints found on the case containing the gun, stored inside Grotberg's Nissan Pathfinder, belonged to Jackson. And he lied to law enforcement personnel about the blood on his hands, Grotberg's health and whereabouts, and whether he lived with his mother on Esteban Lane, according to Hanley. She said a deputy asked Jackson whether Grotberg was okay, and Jackson had replied he should be. She said he didn't call 911 or tell deputies or detectives or county jail personnel that his mother and her boyfriend were dead. Defense attorney Thomas Scholeben told jurors the evidence provided by investigators during the days-long trial matched Jackson's retelling of the shooting. Jackson, who took the witness stand on Friday, testified that an angry Grotberg retrieved the gun from his Pathfinder and threatened DeMotts with the weapon in the family home. Jackson said he wrestled the gun away from Grotberg and hit him in the head with it before removing the magazine and tossing it to the floor. Grotberg, in Jackson's retelling, grabbed the gun and headed for the bedroom with DeMotts following him. That's when Jackson said he heard a gunshot. Investigating, he said he found his mother halfway off the bed, shot. His face twisting, Jackson described hopping onto the bed and cradling his mother before Grotberg pulled her off and fired a second round into her head. Jackson recalled again wrestling the gun away from Grotberg, and when Grotberg lunged at him, he said he pulled the trigger. Scholeben said Monday that all prosecutors could prove was that Jackson had been in the vicinity of a gunshot, that he at some point touched the gun case, and that he had killed Grotberg, which Jackson admitted under oath. As for Jackson's behavior following the shooting, Scholeben chalked it up to trauma. He also returned to a familiar refrain for the defense that the detectives had built their investigation around Jackson. They failed to look at any other explanation for what occurred on Esteban Lane that day, he argued, which included checking Grotberg's clothes for DeMotts' blood. Hanley sought to preemptively blunt several of Scholenben's arguments, among them that a distraught Jackson had cradled his wounded mother. Investigators found DNA matching Grotberg on his blood-stained clothes, she said, but they found none for DeMotts. She noted that the Smith & Wesson found with Jackson had a 15-round magazine in it and another round in the chamber. Jackson reloaded and then went traipsing around the neighborhood with the pistol stuck into his waistband, she said. Kinnison, who prosecuted the case alongside Hanley, reiterated Jackson's failure to alert anyone to the shooting in her rebuttal. Did his actions afterward jibe with his assertion that he killed Grotberg in self-defense, she asked them. She also addressed the prosecution's omission of an explanation as why the shooting occurred. Motive, she said, is not necessary to prove a defendant's guilt. 2 citizens of Blackfeet Nation filed a lawsuit against the federal government on April 4th, alleging tariffs the Trump administration is imposing on Canada violates the U.S. Constitution and tribal treaty rights. State Senator Susan Weber, a Democrat from Browning, and Jonathan St. Goddard, a rancher on the Blackfeet Reservation, named the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Secretary Kristi Noem, and the United States of America in the suit, which was filed in the Montana Federal District Court. The plaintiffs are represented by Monica Tranel, who ran as a Democrat for Montana's Western congressional seat in 2022 and 2024. The lawsuit, filed one day before thousands of people participated in nationwide protests against the Trump administration, is the latest example of tribes flexing their sovereign status to oppose new federal policy. It's also one of several legal challenges related to President Donald Trump's recent tariff orders. The lawsuit specifically pertains to several executive orders, including one on February 1st that expanded an emergency declaration to include the flow of illicit drugs across the U.S. Canada border, and one on April 2nd that announced global reciprocal tariffs. The lawsuit also regards two February 10th proclamations that impose tariffs on steel and aluminum products. Plaintiffs allege the orders violate the U.S. Constitution, which gives Congress, not the President, the power to regulate commerce. Trump declared several national emergencies due to U.S. trade deficits and the flow of illegal drugs over the northern border, and invoked the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to issue the tariffs. But the two Blackfeet citizens say the president had no legal basis to do so, arguing the IEEPA statute does not include the power to tariff. A legal group that lists conservative mogul Charles Koch among its supporters filed a similar lawsuit Thursday related to tariffs on China. Plaintiffs in that lawsuit allege that Trump's use of the national emergency law is illegal. Trump is the first president to use IEEPA to impose tariffs, according to Politico. Complainants in the Montana case further allege that the Canada tariffs violate the Jay Treaty, which was signed in 1794 by the U.S. and Great Britain to ease Revolutionary War tensions. While the treaty primarily focused on the two countries, it also recognized the rights of Native Americans to freely cross over the U.S.-Canada border. It also stipulated that American Indians were not to pay duties or taxes on their own goods when crossing the border. Plaintiffs further allege that orders imposing Canada tariffs are unconstitutionally vague and therefore violate their right to due process, the legal principle that requires the government to treat people fairly. Representatives from the Department of Homeland Security did not immediately respond to a request from comment from the Montana Free Press. Montana's Snowpack is holding strong heading into spring after March delivered a solid punch of snowfall to the northern Rocky Mountains. The Flathead Basin's snow water equivalent was at 99% of median as of Tuesday. The measurement is the amount of liquid water held in the snowpack and is generally used to help predict spring runoff and summer river flows. The Kootenai Basin snowpack was at 96% of normal, with the lower and upper Clark Fork basins at 93%. March brought a combination of snow accumulation, snow melt, and rain to Montana, said Eric Larson, a hydrologist with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. Larson said the good news is precipitation was above normal across a majority of the state during March, with nearly all river basins receiving 110% to 140% of median total monthly precipitation. The timing in several of the storms varied across the month. During the first 2 weeks of March, most weather stations reported up to an inch or two of precipitation. However, northwest Montana reported slightly more, at about 2 to 4 inches. Storms intensified during the second half of the month, and most snowtel sites reported 2 to 5 inches of additional precipitation. Total monthly precipitation ranged from about 1 inch at several snowtel sites in southwest Montana to about 14 inches at the highest elevations in northwest Montana. Noisy Basin and the Swan Range had about 123 inches of snow on the ground Tuesday, holding nearly 50 inches of water. Larson said the Rocky Mountain front needs several large winter storms during April and May. One location in central Montana worth noting, Larson said, is the Big Snowy Mountains, where the Crystal Lake Snowtel site at 6,100 feet had its fourth highest April 1st snowpack in 47 years. Larson said that while recent warm and sunny weather has been a reminder that summer is around the corner, additional snow is needed in the mountains to ensure healthy river flows. Snowpack levels generally peak this month. He said May 1st snowpack conditions will provide a more certain indication of what snowmelt will bring this season. Most April-July stream flows across the state are forecasted to be near or below normal at 80 to 105% of median, according to the NRCS models. Regions with larger water year precipitation and snowpack deficits, such as the St. Mary, Sun Teton, Marias, and Powder River basins, are predicting below normal stream flow of 60 to 90% of median. Larson said Montana's mountain snow conditions are better than last year at this time, but we are not out of the woods yet. Spring is generally a wet time of year in Montana, and he's hoping that holds true this year too. Thanks for joining us. News Now is a podcast from the Daily Interlake. We're proud to be the largest independent newsroom in Montana and the longest continuously published newspaper in the region. Today's stories are written by Daily Interlake news editor Derek Perkins and regional managing editor Matt Baldwin, as well as Montana Free Press reporter Nora Mabey. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel to never miss an episode of the pod. Everybody stay safe and have a great week. Thanks to our sponsor, Lauren's Auto Repair at 1309 U.S. Highway 2 in Kalispell. Most consistently rated 5-star shop serving the Kalispell area. Visit lawrensauto.com.
frustrated and the callous spell